Welcome to The Creative Influencer, where we discuss all things creative with an emphasis on influencers. The Creative Influencer is hosted by John Pfeiffer. John is an entertainment attorney in Santa Monica, California, who represents influencers and other creatives.
This is episode 5 of the third season of the Creative Influencer podcast. Today we interview Amelia Edmondson. Amelia is an Instagram influencer who, after graduating from Pepperdine with a degree in advertising last year, went all in on making a living as an influencer. Amelia shares the lessons she's learned along the way, including how to be authentic and true to yourself as an influencer, while also transitioning from college to post-grad real-world life. You can enjoy this interview. I am joined today by Amelia Edmondson. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You are an Instagram influencer.
I am.
And you are a Pepperdine graduate.
Yes.
And I reached out to you after you appeared in an article in the Pepperdine newspaper. Mm-hmm. It was titled, "Pepperdine Provides a Breeding Ground for Instagram Influencers." Mm-hmm. But we weren't able to connect because you went...
Yeah, to Hawaii. I lived there for 6 months and did the whole traveling thing, but now I'm back.
But I have to tell you, I'm glad we didn't connect because I think there's more to talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to ask you about the articles first, and then your transition since graduation. Okay. So the first article was Artist Corner, where it was a feature about you. And you were a sophomore at the time. Mm-hmm. So you were...
a long time ago. A lot has changed.
What month is your birthday?
January.
So you were 20 at the time?
Yes, I just turned 23. So that would be correct.
Yeah. And just for background, when did you first start on Instagram?
I would say I really started gaining momentum actually around the time this article came out. It was the first time I really had the time to really focus on what I wanted to be doing. And it's funny because I think my intention for what I wanted to do has been the same since the article was written. It's just only grown, and it's really cool to see how I kind of stuck with it and it's translated into what it has today.
Well, because in the article you talked a lot about starting a blog.
Yes.
And in essence, your Instagram account is your blog.
Yeah, I actually, at that time, I ended up having like a physical platform as well, like a website, and quickly learned that writing is not my favorite thing to do. But yeah, I did try that. But I think Instagram has been where I keep a lot of my words and the things that I would be sharing on a blog.
In the article, it talks about your mom was a photographer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was a photographer and a model. When she was younger too, so it's had a lot of influence.
And that you had been, essentially your entire life has been photographed.
Everything has been documented. I'm like we joke that I'm like the most documented child.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
No, I'm an only child, so I got all the attention. Yeah, we have everything recorded, everything photographed, which I definitely has played a huge role in me wanting to document the everyday parts of life.
So that's been your norm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because before even Instagram was a thing, I would want to set up shoots and I'd set up little things to be like, "Mom, can you photograph this?" And it was for nothing, just to have for fun. But I think that muscle has been exercised since a very young age.
So do you even think anything about it now?
It depends on what it is. But I think that just because it's been so ingrained in me, daily I see different things in different ways that I want to photograph. So it's honestly become somewhat of a habitual habit. Yeah.
The first quote in the article is, there is such a need for authenticity and emotional realness, and that's what I want to bring to my work. Mm-hmm. Do you still believe that?
I do. Yeah, I think that as technology grows, it's just going to be harder and harder to find the humanness in the social media realm, and I feel a responsibility to how that translates into what I share. I think it is a way that I've connected with people that I have found on the platform, and I think it's very important moving forward. Yeah.
How much time do you spend a day just on social media?
So I think it changes. The past 6 months when I was traveling, it was less time. I've found that I have to be responsible for what headspace I'm in. And if I'm in a good headspace, I can consume more. But if I'm not, I don't want that to affect me. And I also don't want to be responsible for the energy that I'm putting into it. So it depends on my mood and the amount of work I have to do.
How hard is it? Because I mean, as somebody that is not an Instagram frequent poster,
right?
But I'm on Instagram a lot looking. How hard is it for you that is on Instagram to avoid the comparison game?
It's very hard. I think I was actually having this conversation with someone the other day that when I have a lot of momentum going and I'm really stoked on what I'm sharing and have a lot of inspiration to create, it's not really much of an issue because I feel like I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. But then, of course, as every artist struggles with, you have times where you're not feeling as inspired. Life happens, you're growing as a person, and you don't really know what you want to be creating. And because there's no cap to the amount of work you can be doing, it's easy to see these people who are grinding super hard and creating really cool things, and you're like, well, I'm falling behind.
Yeah,
I would say,
why am I not doing that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's, I think, too, I put all this pressure on myself to be successful. So when you do have those times of rest, which are very necessary, you have to make a conscious effort to be like, this is only going to help me in the future.
How do you define, you said you put pressure on yourself to be successful. How do you define success?
It's interesting because I think this year, more than any other year, I've had to redefine what that means for me. And so I would say this has been the most financially successful year, and I quickly learned that financial success is not at all what fuels my drive. And I think it's creating things that inspire me and add value. And I think as an influencer who makes their career off of working with brands, it's like, how do you create something that adds value and isn't just something that's simply trying to sell something? Right. And so for me, I don't know if that properly answered your question, but it's definitely to find something.
And we'll come back to it because towards the end I have, I'm not going to ask you 100 questions, but it's the a la Vogue, the quick questions.
Okay.
In the article, back to the article, it says, my brand is free-spirited. Do you believe that's still the case?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, the concept of having a brand, because people are encouraged to have one brand that they really stick to and be consistent with. And that definitely helps in terms of like with engagement, and people like to like be expectant on what they're going to see. But I've found that over the past like 4 years of me creating, that I've changed so rapidly and grown so much as a human that there's not one brand that fits who I am as a person. So
you still have a very beachy look.
Yeah, I feel like it's so funny too, because I actually grew up in West Virginia, and people are like, "You're not from California?" I'm like, no, I grew up in the mountains. But yeah, I love the beach. But yeah, I think the idea of being a free-spirited is somewhat open to interpretation because I've changed, and I feel like as the ebbs and flows of life happen, so have my like quote unquote brand. Right. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to fast forward 2 years. There was another article in Pepperdine newspaper, Pepperdine Graphic, titled "Pepperdine Provides a Breeding Ground for Instagram Influencers," which is true.
Yeah.
First, how did you pick Pepperdine?
It's such a funny story because it's actually the only school in California I looked at. I came on a whim on a trip to California that I was able to go on because I injured myself and wasn't able to play volleyball, which was like my thing in high school. Went to Malibu because we're like, why not? Passed it and just drove around. And I was like, wow, this is a really cool campus. And when I applied, I kind of forgot about it because I didn't think I'd get in. I don't know why. I was just like, it seems somewhat unattainable. And I was pretty set on going to school in Georgia. And then I got in and I was like, dang, I can't not go. So I just ended up going.
And did you know anybody when you got here?
No. Well, I had somewhat of a mutual friend that sort of showed me around campus, but other than that, I didn't. I kind of came knowing no one.
How was that transition?
I was scared at first, but it ended up being so exciting, and I feel like I really was able to figure out who I was, because I think growing up in West Virginia, I'm so grateful for it, and it was such a amazing place to grow, but it inhibited me creatively in ways because I wasn't able to really explore that. So being here, it was almost like you had everything, and everything was incredibly beautiful, and it was just so inspiring, and there's so many creatives to connect with here. And so I was honestly thriving. I didn't get homesick at all.
Not at all. How big was the town you came from?
I couldn't give you the exact number, but Small.
How small is small?
I'm trying to think of a place to compare it to.
Because my hometown...
I think it's like 2 million. Yeah.
Oh, your town is 2 million? Oh, see, when you said small, I grew up on a farm in Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
15 miles from a town of 1,000 people.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's small.
Yeah.
That's small.
Yeah. No, that's really small. Not quite small.
Okay. So how many people in your high school graduating class?
400, around there. Yeah.
Okay, so back to Pepperdine.
Yeah.
The article said that you modeled before you did Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
What particular type?
I just kind of did a lot of lifestyle stuff, and I'm really tall, so everyone was like, oh my gosh, you should do modeling, and I did a lot of like athletic wear and different stuff in that
When
realm.
you say really tall, how tall is tall?
I'm 6'1", so yeah, I'm a long girl. But I quickly
Which is why the volleyball in high school.
Yeah. And even at Pepperdine, everyone thought I was on the volleyball team, but I wasn't. I did intramurals, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I did the modeling thing, loved it, but also had this itching to be on the creative side of things, like the creative direction. And also, I feel like going into the whole creative world, I had these limitations because I thought, I need to stay fit and like make sure I'm within this certain like measurement, because I had this idea of being a model and what those measurements looked like, and it just wasn't really that attainable, and it was definitely inhibiting. But then when I found this world of influencing, that wasn't even really what was called at the time. I was like, wow, you mean I can model and creative direct and be in charge of everything while making a living doing it? And I was like, that's something I want to work towards. Yeah. And it's been such an interesting, and I can still do modeling. It's just in a different capacity. Yeah.
Different platform.
Yeah. Different way.
You talked in the article to the reporter about balancing Instagram and school.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Interesting. And actually it's reflecting on that since post-grad has actually been fascinating, because I think I loved what I was studying, but I didn't really love the school part. I loved the structure it provided. And it was almost like every day it was a game to see, how can I shoot this and then get all my homework done? And I would be in the library for 10 minutes and then call a friend and be like, hey, I really need to shoot this before the sunset goes down. So we would run to the beach, shoot for 10 minutes, go back, I'd finish my homework. And it was almost like, because I had so much on my plate, I felt so productive and was in this go space, and it almost made me even more inspired creatively. But the balance was definitely not even. It was kind of like it gets done when it gets done.
What was your major?
Advertising.
Mm-hmm. There's in the article, it said the hardest part isn't being recognized, because you were asked if you were recognized. Mm-hmm. And let me stop there a second. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the first time you were recognized.
I actually had a really funny experience in Hawaii. I was at this cafe, and this girl had this really cool sweater on. I was like, wow, I really like your sweater. And she was quiet for a second, and she was like, I definitely follow you on Instagram. You just moved here, didn't you? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, this is so wild. She was like, I am visiting from North Carolina, and I love your Instagram, and I was so inspired to come here because I saw your photos. And I was like, because to me, Instagram is something I do. It's not who I am.
Right.
And for someone to recognize me, it felt so bizarre. And it was really flattering. But it was also just so odd, because you don't really think that people are really watching what you do. But they are.
Because you put it out in the ether.
Yeah, you put it out there. But it's kind of like, maybe people will see this. I don't know. Yeah.
Do you feel judged?
Sometimes. And I think that is something that I've struggled with in terms of when people see my Instagram before they meet me. I think the connotation of an Instagram influencer isn't necessarily a good one. And I love who I am as a person. And sometimes I don't feel like my Instagram encapsulates all of who I am. And I'm always like, I wish someone could get to know me before they saw that part of me. And yeah, I definitely think it changes the way people communicate from time to time. But I also know that my intentions are good, and I'm happy with what I create.
How do you deal with the stereotypes?
Honestly, I kind of just try to own it. I'm like, yeah, I'm an influencer. I try to inspire people to live mindfully and healthy. And if they have some kind of judgment towards that, then that's on them, because I know that I'm doing what I can and that I'm proud of what I do, yeah.
Well, let's actually change to your Instagram posts.
Okay.
On April 23rd, 2019, you posted, "Tomorrow is my last day of school ever."
Yeah.
Did you think then, and do you still think that school's done for you?
Interesting question. So, since post-grad has been unfolding, I've taken a lot of interest in psychology, and specifically like the Enneagram and different.
Which type are you?
I'm a 3-wing 4. I'm really into it. And I could see myself potentially studying something later down the road in the psych realm. But I'm not certain. I also would love to take classes in videography and more graphic design classes, but that might be something I do just bits and pieces. But we'll see. Yeah.
And then it goes on to say, I'm so excited for this next chapter of life. What did you envision?
Whew, good
so
question.
Put your head back.
Yeah.
You're just taking your last class. You're going to graduate in 3-4 days.
I'm like moving to Hawaii. I'm like, cool. I have no idea what to expect. I definitely, the past 2 months have been about me really reflecting on my time in Hawaii and traveling. And I will say I had very, very high expectations for myself and had no idea how difficult post-grad would be. I had this idea. I was like, I'm going to move to Hawaii. I'm going to make acai bowls every day. And I'm going to just like learn to surf and do all the things. And it was much different than I expected, but it was what I needed. I think that moving someplace where you don't know anyone is one of the most challenging things you can do. And without having the structure of school and the consistency of it, I was like somewhat floundering, and it was terrifying.
Well, people forget that when you go to college, you're in new classes every day with people, so you get to meet people. Once you graduate, it's not like you're in a class together.
And I'm extremely extroverted, which has become, I have a new understanding of it because I've found that for me, I get energy from being around people. So even if I wasn't interacting with people I was in school, the energy of being surrounded by people was energizing to me.
So if you're in an elevator,
right?
Do you talk to people?
Absolutely. I'm a talker. Sometimes it gets on my friends' nerves, but I just love to talk to everyone. Because I think something, too, I found with traveling is the, have you ever heard of, like, the 6 degrees of separation?
Yeah, the Kevin Bacon thing.
It's gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's, like, so fun for me to meet someone, and they'll tell me where they're from. Like, oh, do you know? And I'll name, like, the one person I know from there and try to make some random connection, because that's such a crazy concept to me, and I've found such bizarre mutual friends with people.
So how did you pick Hawaii?
So I went to visit a friend who lived there, and I noticed that I felt encouraged to step more into who I felt like was the best version of myself. And it was just such a different place. I had never seen anything quite like it before. And on top of that, because it's like an island, there's a lot of focus on sustainable living, and that's kind of something I'm very passionate about. And so I was like, maybe I'd like to live here for a little bit. And my goal was that by the time of post-grad, I would have saved enough to be able to move wherever I wanted to pursue more creative work. And this opportunity just kind of presented itself, and this girl was like, hey, I'm subleasing my apartment for 3 months, which was like the perfect amount of time, and it was on a month-to-month basis, so if I wanted to leave, I could. And I was like, well, I can't not go. And it was terrifying. I remember when I made the decision, I got sick to my stomach, and I was like, that's fear.
A lot of people don't say that about going to Hawaii.
Yeah, well, it was just because I was like, I had no idea what to expect. I was leaving California. I had my momentum. I had the people that helped me shoot. I had like all of the resources that I needed to do the creative work, and I was kind of leaving everything behind to go into the unknown, and it was terrifying.
When you get to Hawaii, how did you find somebody to help you shoot?
Yep. Well, didn't really take that into consideration until I got there. I had one friend who helped me a couple times, but then outside of that, I had taken on the most work I had ever taken on, and I was like, I did not plan for this ahead of time. I started using a tripod. I got real good at using that
with
and
timers.
Taking photos with timers, but it was hard because I love the collaboration of working with someone else. And so the first month too, I had a friend who had visited me and we'd shot a lot. But there was like a 3-month period where I had tons of work, very little help, and it was extremely stressful. and I felt like I was going to fail, and I was so worked up about it. And that was a really good lesson for me.
Even though you're on Instagram, you also are on YouTube
Yeah.
in a limited basis.
In a limited, yeah.
But there's a video of you on a VW bus. Whose bus is that?
So when I got there, I had this dream of finding one and then renting it so that me and my friend could go camping in it. And I was scouring the internet and found this dude that had this beautiful green bus. And so I reached out and was like, hey, would love to shoot in this bus and camp in it. And he was really cool and let us rent it. That was honestly one of the highlights of my time in Hawaii. It was just such a good time. Yeah. That video, I want to do more YouTube videos, but I think now that I'm back in California and I have more time and people that can help me, that's an intention of mine. But yeah, that was fun.
In the videos you see it. There was one where you had a movie night and you would put the movie against a wall
with a projector.
But you put a sheet up, and then there was like hearts around it and all this other stuff.
Lights, yeah.
How much of that in your daily life do you make it something like that an event?
Oh, every time I would set up a movie night, I would have people over to watch a movie. That's actually one of my favorite hobbies to have. Or a favorite hobby of mine is setting up movie nights. But do you mean in terms of when I set up shoots, how often is it like a...
Well, I mean, to watch the shoots or the videos and to look at the photos, it's the most elegantly set up
Thank you.
food you could ever have.
Yeah.
You know, like, I would eat everything before I set it up.
I know. I feel like everyone gets mad at me. I'm like, you can't eat it yet.
Yeah.
Like, I have to take the photos. I'm like, can we eat yet? Can we eat yet? I'm like, nope. Yeah. It's kind of my excuse because I'm like, I paid for it, so you have to wait.
There you go. And then on September 11th, 2019, you wrote on Instagram, these have been a really difficult last 3 months. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was kind of the time when I was in Hawaii. I didn't really have a community. I had a couple friends here and there. I didn't have a lot of help or resources to do the creative work I wanted to be doing. I think it was a time that I really had to learn to just accept where I was and enjoy it. But I felt all this pressure to be like, well, I should be so happy because I'm on this island and I live right next to the beach. I'm in paradise. I have all this beautiful fruit and flowers everywhere. And the pressure to perform and the pressure to be happy was extreme. And I think I just had such high expectations for myself and was so hard on myself that it was difficult for me to accept I might be struggling.
You wrote a post about that too.
Yeah.
You also go on to say, but it's hard. Post-grad is weird. The 20-something years are weird. What did you mean?
I just mean, I think you hear it, but no one goes into the post-grad really believing that no one really knows what they're doing. I think that everyone sort of expects it to fall into place, but more often than not, I think people have this season of just trying to figure out what they're meant to be doing, and then you realize you don't have the distractions of being surrounded by people and you're really alone with those feelings, and there's no formula to figuring it out. Except for just moving forward.
Well, I remember the first fall after law school. I'd been going to school my entire life. And I had this free-floating anxiety of something's not right. And it took about a month to realize it's because I'm not in school.
Yeah.
I don't have this structure anymore.
Well, because when you're in school, I don't know if it's like this for everyone, but I had a completely separate life outside of school. So I wasn't expecting the lack of it to really affect me that much. But it was huge. But it was with the removing of being in school that I learned so much about how I function and what fuels my fire. So it was like very necessary, but a difficult transition.
Well, it's because for most college graduates, it's the first time you've never had that structure. Monday there's a class, Tuesday there's a class, Wednesday there's a class.
Yeah, and it's also too when you're doing freelance Instagram or YouTube or whatever it may be, it's up to you. Like everything's up to you. No one provides your schedule. No one tells you where or you need to be here then, and it's all up to you. And it was like, whoa, if I don't get in my groove, then how am I going to succeed?
The September 11th post goes on. IDK, what I'm doing with my life. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Mental breakdowns. What would trigger those thoughts?
Yeah. I would say, honestly, because when I was in school and I was working so hard, I felt like I was really successful creatively. And because I obviously didn't have the resources and wasn't working as hard, I felt like I wasn't being as successful. And because I'm a 3 and a success-driven person, if I feel like I have failed in some capacity, then it's like, well, why am I here? Like, what am I meant to be doing? That's such a heavy way of thinking about it. But I remember at that time, that was kind of the mindset I was in.
The post finishes, thought this word vomit of a caption was a good first start.
Yeah. I specifically remember that at that time, I felt ingenuine posting on Instagram if I wasn't transparent about how I was feeling in my heart. And I think that's something that I have taken to heart, because I think you have to be responsible for what you're sharing, and to portray that everything's perfect all the time. I mean, it's somewhat cliche to say,
not.
I know, but it's like I feel more connected to people when they share those times. And if I'm going to be on the platform, I would hope that I'm able to touch someone in some way. Yeah.
Now we're going to go ahead for 2 months, November 4th. I've had a few friends lovingly tell me that they wish I spoke to myself with the same love and encouragement I do to them. I honestly didn't realize how harsh I was speaking to myself. Mm-hmm. Tell me about your inner critic.
Yeah, so I think, again, it just comes back to the fact that I had these expectations to be succeeding in a way that I had set for myself when going to Hawaii and when going to post-grad, and didn't expect all the feelings of fear and uncertainty take over. And I thought that I should push through that. But it was almost like it was my fault, and I wasn't giving myself grace for struggling in conditions that are obviously difficult.
Was that the first time you'd felt that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it was almost like before I thought that, I remember times of being like, I'm unstoppable. I have everything I can need. Like, nothing's going to stop me now. And because I'd never felt that before, I was like, am I done for? Like, is there...
A 22-year-old has
to go for? Yeah, you know? And it's ridiculous. And I remember talking to my parents, like, you're actually being absurd, you know? I mean, they said it lovingly, but they were like, it's going to be okay. But I think there's times, and it's so bizarre, because since being in California, I feel this sense of just peace and belonging and so much more myself. And I wish, and I knew this at the time, I was like, I know future me is going to wish she could grab me by the shoulders and be like, hey, it's going to be okay. Yeah. Chill out. But sometimes when you're just in those thoughts, it's hard to get out. Yeah.
Now we're going to fast forward to January 1st-ish of this year. You post, 2019 was a doozy, to say the least. Here's some of the things I learned. And then you go through the bullet point list, which this I did not know. Smile face tattoo. Smile face toe tattoos rub off very quickly.
Yes, I did not know that. My friend and I got tattoos on the bottom of our big toes, and it literally lasted a week. And I felt so cool because I got a real tattoo. Oh. But in Hawaii, you don't wear shoes, so it just rubs off very quickly. And I was like, oh,
that never even occurred to me. Okay, but then you have a couple bullets down. When you feel the urge to talk to someone you don't know, do it. Mm-hmm. Which we talked about, talking in the elevators. Yeah. Did you talk to people in lines at the grocery store?
I did. I talked to everyone. It's actually, so that one in particular, when I was in Hawaii, I was at this place called the Sunrise Shack, which is a super popular, like, smoothie place. And this girl complimented a sticker on my water bottle. And it was a California sticker. And then we got to talking, and she is now, for sure, a lifelong friend, and was someone who was going through some of the same struggles I was when I was in Hawaii. And she was just put there at the right place at the right time. And I think sometimes, like, if I hadn't felt the urge to continue a conversation with her, I wouldn't have had so many of the beautiful memories that I had from Hawaii. Yeah.
A few more bullet points down. I'm bad at confrontation, but I got better this year and I'm quite proud of myself.
Yeah.
Why are you bad at confrontation?
I think it's a matter of, as a 3, I fear people thinking of me differently than I want them to. And for me, if I confront someone, it's this fear that they're not going to accept me. But it's almost like if there's someone I need to confront, I don't know why I would need them to accept me.
You.
Yeah. But I think something I've learned is that confrontation is a really important form of self-love. And I've lovingly taken steps in the direction of what I need to say to people, not in an aggressive way, but
well, there's ways of saying things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think being young and having roommates just really like nails that point in, because communication is so important. Yeah.
Yes. Then you go on. We all have a purpose, and though chasing it, we make the world a better place. What's your purpose?
So I'm still figuring it out, but right now I would say my purpose is to use creativity to inspire people to live mindfully and sustainably. I feel that very strongly. Yeah. And
coming from West Virginia, where did that come from?
So when I was in high school and middle school, I didn't really know much about what it meant to live sustainably. I took a class on environmental science and sort of learned a little bit about global warming. But then since coming here, I was like, whoa, there's a whole new world of learning in this subject that I was completely unaware of. And I think being from somewhere where it's maybe not talked about quite as much, I feel a responsibility to share on my platform the importance of living in that way.
Do you read the comments?
I do. Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, you could care less, 10, it really hurts. Where are you on that scale when you read comments?
You mean if they're aggressive?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, 1. Like, it's one of those things for me that I feel like if someone has the time and energy to comment something that's negative, then that's just really sad for them. And I'm like...
No, that's always been my view. It's like, where do you get the time to do this? And why would you do this?
People actually ask me that a lot. And I'm like, I honestly could care less, because it's silly. Like, I tried to put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, I would never comment something like this on someone's photo. So
I interviewed a photographer, a professional photographer, and she does a lot of beauty shoots of women and a lot of bikini shoots because she's a woman. They trust her. And so she puts her subject on her Instagram account. And she was talking about the marriage proposal she would get when it's not even her.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, people are sometimes they're just on another planet. I don't know. Yeah, that's crazy. So I've gotten crazy comments and messages.
So have you gotten marriage proposals?
Yes. I've gotten requests to have photos of my feet often. And actually, it's so funny because when I was in Hawaii, I got feet messages all the time. And I was like, why am I getting so many of these? And then I was like, oh, because every photo I post, I'm barefoot. I was like, makes sense.
I just don't get that whole foot fetish thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I just don't get it. Okay, now we're going to transition from global warming and sustainability to 73 questions a la Vogue.
Cool.
Okay. What question do you ask to find out the most about a person?
What's your Enneagram?
And we already know your answer because I've got to turn it back around on you. What question would you most like to know the answer to? And on Vogue, they get these questions in advance.
Right.
So,
oh, you mean like in terms of like around the world?
No, I mean, you've seen them, there's videos where they'll do famous people, and it's like...
Totally. I'm trying to think of... So wait, what do you mean when you ask that question?
So what question... What question don't you know the answer to that you just like to know the answer to?
Whether eating meat is as bad for us as we think.
Favorite food? What's your favorite food? You thought meat was my favorite food. What's your favorite food?
I would say sweet potatoes.
Least favorite food?
Candy.
You're lucky. Do you collect anything?
I collect patches from the places I travel to.
Really? Where do you put them?
I have a backpack that I'm saving all of them up to put them on, and I also intend on buying a jacket to put them on because I have way too many.
What TV channel doesn't exist but should?
These are good questions. I'm like, dang. I would say like a TV show that shows you how to do simple things like how to sew on a button in day-to-day tasks that I feel like...
I think that's YouTube.
Well, yeah, YouTube's for that. I was like, I'm pretty sure there's a channel for everything. I really can't think of anything that doesn't exist.
Especially if you go to YouTube.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
Forrest Gump. And The Grinch. It's a close tie. The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Yeah, or How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
What's the last movie that made you cry? Forrest Gump.
Love Forrest Gump. Wait, I watched a movie the other day and cried. Hidden Figures.
If you could star in a movie, who would you want to be your co-star?
Ooh, Jennifer Gardner. She went to my middle school and my high school.
Really?
And yeah, she's the one person that I would really love to run into at some point while I'm here.
What's your guilty pleasure? Oh, by the way, you want to run into celebrities? Go to the grocery store at Ralph's in Malibu.
Oh, yep. I need to be there all the time. I would say guilty pleasure is listening to Taylor Swift all the time. Love her. No shame.
What's the one talent you wish you had?
Singing.
Can't sing?
I feel like I'm okay, but I'm not great. But when people can sing, I think it's just such a beautiful skill.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve. The lying, laughing, crying emoji. Do you know the one I'm talking
Yes,
about?
I do.
I don't know why. For some reason, when I see it, I think it
you?
makes things not funny. Yeah.
I have been interviewed for the Wall Street Journal once, and it was about emojis. So.
Oh, yeah. Emojis, you have to use the right ones.
Yeah. I mean, my son said, "You're on the Wall Street Journal feed about emojis." So it's like, okay.
That's funny.
Have you ever been starstruck?
Honestly, no. I think that I've gone into living in LA, I've learned if someone is a really good person and they've done something really noble, that is what's star-striking to me, because I've met so many celebrities who I feel like aren't really kind people. Yeah.
What's the best compliment you've ever received?
You help me be a better person, I would say. Yeah.
It's a nice compliment. If you could turn any activity into an Olympic sport, what would you have the best chance of winning a medal at it?
I would say maybe like speed creating a photo shoot. I feel like I'm really good at just like getting it really quick and seeing what looks best. Yeah.
Now that you're back in LA, do you have somebody help you take your photos?
I have a few friends here. Yeah. I'm actually, now that I'm here and I have the resources to what I feel like I need to create a really good schedule for myself, I plan on having multiple days a week where I shoot with different friends of mine. Yeah.
How many days a week do you plan to shoot?
It changes depending on how many projects I have and how I'm feeling. Because sometimes I get in this zone where I want to shoot every single day, and then sometimes I'm like, this one was really exhausting. I kind of need to take a breather. Yeah.
How do you consume media?
Mindfully. I would say that over the year I've learned the importance of really limiting what I'm looking at and really getting in touch with how things make me feel. And so I think that my emotions and mood is an indicator of how much I consume, and I very much curate what I consume. Yeah.
What's a question you wish people would stop asking you?
What do you want to do with the rest of your life? Because I think it puts so much pressure on us, and I think it changes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of living left to be done.
For sure.
How is it dating and being an Instagram influencer?
Interesting, for sure. I have found that an intention of mine is for when I do date, I want it to be someone that I haven't really met through or who knows about my social media. Not because I think I'm like special or anything. It's just, I think that it adds a different layer to it. I've like had guys that I've gone on dates with who I've found out later wanted to go out because they wanted to be influencers and they wanted me to like post about
so you
it,
could cross-post,
which is so cringy. Like, that's the grossest thing I've ever heard. And then I think also, like we were talking about earlier about the stereotypes of being an influencer, I think it changes the way people see me. And if someone is going to have a idea of who I am before they get to know me, I don't like that either.
When it's especially bad with YouTubers.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I can imagine.
Because everybody knows everything about their life they've done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, by the time you've done it several years, you run out of material if you don't talk about yourself.
Right. Yeah. I actually have a friend who does YouTube and went through a breakup, and she's like, I don't even know how to talk about this on YouTube. Like, it's so awkward because then if you're also, it's kind of cringy. You know, like you want to be able to talk about it in a way that's respectful to both parties, you know, but it's also like crazy to have people with like a magnifying glass in your life.
Sometimes there's just a little oversharing.
Yeah, oversharing.
Yeah. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And then I'm going to flip it when you get that one done with what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I would say the best piece of advice I've ever received is do what you love and the money will follow.
What's the worst piece of advice?
I feel like something, especially in the space of what I've been doing for a long time, the worst piece of advice I've ever received is that you have to be relentless in working hard for what you want to be doing moving forward, because I've gotten burnt out. And I think that by having that advice in my head, I've learned that it's different for everyone and that the process to working hard is different for everyone. So,
last question for you. Mm-hmm. Where can people find you on Instagram?
Well, my handle is at Amelia Edmondson, and that's the best way. And then I have a link to my YouTube if you're interested in watching my 3 videos. I plan on posting more, but yeah, those are the best ways.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you.
That's it for this time. If you enjoyed our podcast, please write a review on iTunes and tell your friends to subscribe. If you have any questions about influencers or suggestions for future episodes, email them to John at Pfeiffer@pfeifferlaw.com. Thank you for listening.